Now, interfaces can be very useful in Go, and especially this special interface type that stands for any value can be very useful in certain situations since it allows you to write quite flexible code. But it also has some limitations. And here's an example. Let's say you want to create an add function which should take two input values and return the sum of both. But now here's the special thing. These two values should not be of a fixed type like int or float64. Instead, they should be either an int or a float64 or also a string. So that we either combine two strings or we add two ints or we add two floats. Now, of course, you could now use this special interface type here so that Go accepts any kind of value here as an input. But as you see, I'm getting an error here now, that this plus operator is not defined on such a dynamic value type, because not all values support the plus operator. You can't, for example, add two structs together. So this is a bit too flexible. Now you could make it work by using this special syntax here, where this special syntax is used to check whether a is of type int, and if it is, a is int will hold true and will get a value which we can store in a variable where Go now knows that it will be of type int. And you could do that for both a and b, and then in this if check add them together. Now Go would know that both are of type int, and now its only complaint is that we return too many values because at the moment I haven't set up any return value. But we could work around that by setting the return value to int, of course. However, that's a bit too restrictive, because as I mentioned before, your goal might be that you want to accept more than just ints. So you could copy that and also check if it's a float, so that you extract those values and you check for that here by using float64 here, like this. And then down here we would check if a is float and b is float, and in that case we would combine a as a float and b as a float. But now, of course, the problem is that the return type, as mentioned, is too restrictive, and therefore we could use this any return type here, so that any value is allowed. That then also would allow us to repeat this process to check whether a is a string, and do the same for b by using string here. And then here also by checking if a and b are strings, and by then using their string versions for combining them. And then past this if check, if we got any other value, we could return nil, for example. So we could do that, but of course that's a lot of code to write, as you can tell. And that's why Go offers another feature. It offers a concept called generics, and we'll take a closer look at that concept in the next lecture.